Answered in kind. 99. Overcoming gullibility. There is a kind of softness in the human mind that deserves neither ridicule nor sentimental praise. It is simply there, open, reaching, half-lit. The mind receives, and in receiving, it risks. That risk is not a defect in the architecture. It is the price of being capable of trust, learning, love, society, language, and shared meaning. Without that tenderness, no one could be taught anything at all. Without that openness, we would be sealed marble, unyielding and lifeless. And yet, the same openness that makes civilization possible also makes deception possible. One does not arrive at wisdom by denying this. One arrives there by admitting it plainly. Gullibility is not merely foolishness. It is unguarded acceptance. It is the mind opening the gate before it has checked the flag, the seal, the accent, the source, the motive, the timing, the shape of the thing itself. The claim enters, and the mind, ever eager to make the world coherent, may bow before asking whether the visitor is friend, fraud, or something more complicated. This is not rare. It is ordinary. It is human. It is everywhere. And because it is ordinary, it is dangerous. Gullibility is not an aberration. It is woven into the species. We are not dealing with a tiny defect in an otherwise perfect machine. We are dealing with a deep feature of consciousness itself. We're pattern-making creatures, meaning-making creatures, story-loving creatures, and social creatures. In other words, we're built to be persuaded. That is the glory and the hazard. So if the task is to overcome gullibility, the task is not to become suspicious of all things. That road turns the heart into a locked room and the mind into a lonely guard pacing a corridor with no windows. No. The task is subtle, firmer, more luminous. The task is to refine trust, to discipline assent, to slow the hand before it signs. Wait a second. To let the mind become less ravenous and more exact. Because gullibility often begins with speed, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Something is heard, and the mind moves too quickly to conclusion. Something is repeated, and repetition begins to masquerade as proof. Something is emotionally satisfying, and comfort gets mistaken for credibility. Something is endorsed by a crowd, and the crowd density becomes to feel like truth density. Something is packaged with confidence, and confidence begins to impersonate evidence. This is how the mind gets lifted by a feather and then crushed by a stone. So we must learn to pause at the precise point where belief begins. That pause is sacred. It is a gift only you may unwrap. Others may look upon you and wonder why you pause. They can wander all day long. They have the same gift, always waiting right there in front of them. But many do not open it. Maybe they don't like surprises. That pause is the hinge on which liberty turns. Not the liberty of believing anything at all, but the liberty of not being dragged by every passing wind. Not the liberty of rejecting the world, but the liberty of seeing it more eagerly as it is. And here difficult mercy enters. A mind does not only crave truth, it craves relief. It craves identity, craves belonging. It craves confirmation. It craves the exquisite narcotic of being sure. This is why gullibility can survive intelligence. This is why brilliant people can be easily moved by what flatters their fears, their tribe, their resentments, their hopes, their vanity, or their wounds. Ow! Intellect alone does not save us. A sharp knife can still be misused by an unsteady hand. A dull blade can still be misused if it is never sharpened. Some say life is a double-edged sword. Assuredly, hate truly is. You always have one edge facing you. Perhaps life really is a double-edged sword. One is sharp, the other is blunt. One must take care which side is which, lest we bop where we should slice, and lop where we should dice. So we turn over a stone. We do not believe merely because a claim is presented. We believe because the claim serves some inner appetite. It may serve our need to feel special, our need to feel morally pure, our need to feel safe in a chaotic world, our need to feel that enemies are simple and that we are not mistaken. When a belief lubricates an emotional need, glides into the psyche with unnerving ease, then it is defended. Then it is rationalized. It is promoted. Then it is mistaken for insight. Happens all the time. This is where the work becomes exacting. For overcoming gullibility means becoming willing to ask not only, is this true? But also, what in us wants this to be true? That question can sting. Good, it should. A question that cannot sting is often too polite to be useful. And still, we must not become harsh in the wrong direction. The goal is not self-contempt. The goal is discernment, which always takes that moment of pause, that moment of feeling. Does this feel like expansion? Does this feel like constriction? There is a brutal kind of skepticism that sneers at everything and knows nothing. That is merely gullibility wearing armor. It still cannot see clearly. It only refuses to blush. True discernment is different. It remains open enough to learn and firm enough to test. It is not sentimental. It is not gullible. It does not confuse warmth with accuracy. It does not confuse consensus with proof. It does not confuse volume with validity. There is a fine line between trust and credulity, and many step across it without hearing the floor change beneath them. So how do we move more wisely? We ask simpler questions. Who said this? How do they know? What is the evidence? What is repeated and what is demonstrated? What would count as disproof? What might be omitted? Who benefits if this is believed? What emotion is this trying to wake? What part of us is being recruited? These questions are not glamorous. They are not mystical. They do not arrive with trumpets. They arrive like clean water in a strong lamp, and precisely because they are plain, they are powerful. Gullibility thrives in haze. It cares not for method. It does not like a light turned low and then raised again. It prefers the rush of impression, the gravity of certainty, the social comfort of nodding along, the sweet intoxication of everyone knows, but everyone knows has misled humanity more than once. The crowd can be wise. The crowd can also be a stampede wearing manners. Sometimes it is not nice or wise at all. Discernment must be paramount. To unwrap that gift, that sacred pause. And here the ancient human hunger for pattern reveals its double edge. We are not content with randomness. We weave connections. We detect significance. We make stories. Mostly, this is useful. Without it, no signs, no art, no memory, no planning. But unchecked, this same power produces phantom meanings, false causation, superstitions, conspiracies, gasp, and 1,000 elegant errors. A stray event becomes a sign. A coincidence becomes a plan. A discomfort becomes evidence. A hunch becomes doctrine. The mind is a gifted tailor, and sometimes it sews a splendid coat from air. Some ask, does every synchronicity hold meaning? I say, sometimes the only meaning is that you are in alignment with who you truly are. In such circumstances, I say, right on schedule, just like always. But on schedule for what? When you are in alignment with who you truly are, you are always right on cosmic schedule. And then, keep on keeping on. So we must learn to distinguish pattern from proof. A pattern can be noticed without being worshipped. A narrative can be compelling without being true. A feeling can be sincere without being reliable. A belief can be shared without being sound. Happens all the time. These distinctions are the bones of wisdom. There is also the matter of repetition. Repetition is one of the sneakiest counterfeiters in the kingdom of thought. Hear a thing once, and it may seem strange. Hear it often enough, and it begins to feel familiar. Familiarity then lends it a false dignity. The mind relaxes. The guard lowers the spear. The claim becomes cozy. And coziness is not evidence. So when a message returns again and again, we must not ask only whether it is loud. We must ask whether it is new, whether it is tested, whether it is only echo, disguised as authority. And if we must outsource our inner authority, who have we offered our certainty to? For the world is full of polished echo chambers. They can sound like cathedrals if one listens too quickly. And yet, for all this caution, there remains a golden thread that must not be severed. Faith, not blind faith, not the gullible offering of the whole mind to the first handsome falsehood that comes singing at the gate, la, 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 la. But faith in truth's discoverability. Faith that questions are not betrayal. Faith that reality does not vanish merely because it takes time to approach. Faith that we can learn to see better. Because if you are not open to that, how closed off are you? Overcoming gullibility is not merely about avoiding being fooled. It is about becoming fit for reality. It is about becoming capable of standing in a world that does not owe us instant clarity, instant certainty, or instant comfort, and nevertheless insisting on honesty. It is about honoring the fact that the soul is not served by haste. Was there something I needed to get to? It can wait. So we slow down. We slow down before we repeat. We slow down before we repeat. We slow down before we share. We slow down before we condemn. And if you're lucky, if you pay close attention, one day you won't need to condemn anything at all. What a freedom it is. We slow down before we crown. We slow down before we call a confusion a revelation. And in that slowing, we give wisdom room to breathe. There is nothing weak in this. It is not passive. It is disciplined. It is exacting. It is the mark of a mind that would rather be corrected than deceived, and rather be precise than popular. That kind of mind is rare, apparently. It is radiant. It is not cynical. It is not naive. It knows that many things are uncertain, and it does not panic at that knowledge. It simply keeps asking. And what is the simplest form of resistance to gullibility? To ask one more question, then another, then one more after that. Not because doubt is sacred in itself, but because premature certainty is very expensive. It costs money. It costs reputation. It costs relationships. It costs public life. It costs entire generations when amplified by fear and charisma and convenience. The world is littered with the wreckage of people who believed too quickly and examined too late. So let us be slower than the trick. Let us be slower than the impulse. Let us be slower than the crowd. And if they must move on without us, so be it. What good is their company if they cannot even pause for a moment to watch the sun set with you? Let us be slower than the seduction of easy explanations. And let us not forget, the same mind that can be gullible can also become wise. That is the mercy in all of this. We are not trapped in our first reaction. We are not sentenced to every instinct. We are educable. We are courageable. We can learn to pause between hearing and believing, between feeling and concluding, between admiration and assent. And that small interval, just a breath, just a glance, just a question, can save us from entire false worlds. So here is the invitation. Let us treat belief as something precious, not casual. Let us treat trust as something earned, not automatic. Let us treat certainty as something to be tested, not cherished for its own sake. Let us treat the mind as a temple that requires discernment at the door. Then gullibility loses its throne. Then clarity grows teeth. Then faith becomes clean. Then wisdom begins to look less like suspicion and more like steadiness. And in the end, that is the measure of our freedom. Not that we believe everything, not that we believe nothing, but that we can still love truth enough to slow down for it. And rest assured, knowing, no matter where you place your attention, you will always be answered in kind.